Hey everyone, Pete here, chilling in the studio at Peak Music. Today we're diving into the modes of the major scale. Modes are essential tools for crafting melodies, solos, and for bringing different moods and colors to your music. We're going to explore the theory behind the modes, how to play them on your guitar, and I'll give you some real-world song examples where each mode is used. Y'all ready to unlock the secrets of modes? Let's get started. There are 7 modes of the major scale, one for each tone in the major scale. The major scale itself consists of 7 unique tones that repeat with each octave. For example, the C major scale includes the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then you would move up to the next octave, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, right? 7 unique notes. Here's the C major scale. Many people describe the scale as happy, bright, joyful, or uplifting. This scale tends to evoke a positive or happy mood. Interestingly, the major scale is also known as the Ionian mode. Ionian is the first mode of the major scale as it begins on the first degree of the major scale. Before we go any further, we need to define a few terms so y'all know what I'm talking about, all right? I've covered some of these in previous videos, which I'll link to below if you want a deeper dive. First term I want to go over is the word interval. An interval measures the distance between 2 notes. For example, the notes C and D are 2 notes apart. So we say that the interval between them is a second. The notes C and E are 3 notes apart. So C and E create a third. 2 intervals that you might already be familiar with are unison and octave. Unison is when you play the exact same note twice. So I'm going to play C and C, just on 2 different strings. And octave. So moving from one C to the next higher or lower C creates an interval of an eighth, right? Which we call an octave. Think octopus, 8 legs, octagon, 8 sides, right? 8. So here's an octave, C, down an octave, and then C, up an octave. The next term, or terms, I want to go over are half steps and whole steps. These are also intervals and are used as our building blocks for bigger intervals and for coming up with scale formulas. A half step is the smallest interval and occurs when you move up or down 1 fret on your guitar. So like C to C sharp, right? Or C down to B, I moved 1 fret. So C to C sharp is going up a half step, C to B is down a half step. A whole step is 2 half steps, meaning you'd move up or down 2 frets on your guitar to get a whole step, like C to D, or C maybe down to B flat. A common use of half and whole steps is when we are describing the pattern or formula for a scale. For instance, the major scale, or our Ionian mode, uses the following formula. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. This means we start the first note of the scale. I'm using the C major scale, so we'll start on the note C, and start playing ascending notes using the formula. Let me do that again for you. Ready? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Or whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. We also use whole and half steps to create bigger intervals. A half step can also be called a minor second, and a whole step is a major second. If we combine those 2 intervals and move 1.5 steps away, or 3 frets away, like C to E flat, we get a minor third. Conversely, 2 whole steps, or 4 frets, is a major third. We will get into more detail on this a little bit later on. Here's a few more terms that I'd like to go over. Tonic. The tonic is the first note of a scale. Essentially, it's home base. It's also the note that gives the scale its name. So for instance, the tonic of the C major scale is the note C. The tonic of the F harmonic minor scale is the note F. Scale degrees. Scale degrees refer to how many intervals a note is away from the tonic. So let's apply some scale degree numbers to the C major scale. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 1. Okay, so C is the tonic or 1, D is the second, E is the third, F is the fourth, G is the fifth, A, 6, B, 7, back to C. Okay? Let's also talk about what the words major and minor mean. These terms are used to describe chords, scales, and intervals. Major tends to mean big or bright, while minor means small or dark. So minor intervals are a half step lower than their major counterparts. For example, E is a major third away from C. So that was 4 frets, right? But E flat is a minor third away from C. So it's exactly 1/2 step lower than that major third. And you can even hear the sound. Think about the sound it makes. A little bit brighter than this dark interval, the minor third, right? We could spend hours just dissecting the different uses and meanings of major and minor, but for now, I just want you to know that the intervals within a scale or mode can be described as major or minor, and that the modes themselves can also have major and minor characteristics. I'll link to a video below for more detail on this. All right, so let's get back to the major scale, or the Ionian mode. So we've been reviewing the notes in the C major scale, but what if I play the same set of notes starting on D, which is our second scale degree, right? So instead of playing C major, I'm gonna play that same set of notes starting on D. So instead of C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, I'm gonna play D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. That sounds a bit different, right? Listen again to the C major scale. I'll go 2 octaves this time. Now that same scale, but starting on the second scale degree. So we'll start on D instead of C. And I want you to think about how it sounds different, or some characteristics you might use to describe the scale starting on the note D. All right, here we go, 2 octaves. Were you able to come up with a couple adjectives to describe that last scale? To me, it sounds mysterious or cool. It's darker than C major, but it's not totally dark. It's not like quite a minor scale, right? I like this idea of using the words bright and dark to describe scales, so let's get used to using those terms. We'll kind of rate our scales on a scale of bright to dark, all right? No pun intended there. This scale, which starts on the note D, but uses the notes from the C major scale, is called the Dorian mode, or D Dorian to be specific. The reason it sounds different is that starting on the second scale degree changes the interval pattern, creating a distinct mood. Okay, so instead of whole step, half step, whole, whole, half, the Dorian mode is whole, half, whole, half, whole. Since it has a different vibe from our bright and happy C major scale, we give it a unique name, Dorian. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna play it one more time, and I'm gonna show you on the screen the notes with the scale degrees written under them. Okay, so the scale degrees now change for this scale. So 1, D, E2, F3, G4, A5, B6, C7, D is 1 again. All right, so let's just recap what we've done so far before we dive into the rest of the modes. We reviewed the notes in the C major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, back to C. Then we started on the second scale degree, D, which created a slightly different mood from our major scale. We then gave this new scale a name, the D Dorian mode, and we didn't give it that name. People thousands of years ago came up with that name. This is the second mode of the major scale because it starts on the second degree of the major scale. Now, the C major scale has 7 unique tones or scale degrees. So from this, we can create 7 different modes, each starting on a different degree within the scale. I'll now try to fit these all on the screen with the correct pronunciations. So the first mode is Ionian. The Ionian mode is also known as the major scale, okay? The Dorian mode is the second mode of the major scale. This is built on the second scale degree. So then the mode that's built on the third scale degree, or the third mode of the major scale, is the Phrygian mode. The fourth mode of the major scale is the Lydian mode. Fifth mode of the major scale is called the Mixolydian mode. The sixth mode of the major scale is called the Aeolian mode. And this is also known as the natural or relative minor. More on this in a second, okay? The seventh mode of the major scale we call the Locrian mode, okay? So we have Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. And that Aeolian mode, remember, is also the natural minor. As I've said before, each of these modes will have its own color, vibe, and mood. And in fact, many of us think of modes as representing different moods. And considering the words are so similar, it's an easy connection. A common misconception is that the word mode means mood in ancient Greek. But that's actually not true. The word mode is actually derived from the Latin word modus, M-O-D-U-S, modus, meaning measure or manner. Either way, associating modes with moods is a very common practice and something I find very helpful. So feel free to do it. All right, so what we're gonna do now is I will provide a little bit more detail on each mode. For every mode of the major scale, I will give you some characteristics of its sound or vibe or mood. I will also list some famous pieces of music that use the mode. And we will go over the interval formula for each mode. And then at the end of each mode, I will show you how to play them in 2 different positions on your fretboard, okay? So we've already talked about the Ionian mode. This is also known as the major scale, the scale we've been exposed to the most since we were little kids. I'm sure many of you remember singing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's the Ionian mode. Pardon my singing. The Ionian mode is bright, happy, and majestic, forming the foundation of countless songs. Here are a few of those songs. So one I'm sure you all know is Let It Be by the Beatles. This song is most certainly in the Ionian mode. Free Fallin' by Tom Petty, another super famous song. My Girl by the Temptations, Ionian, right? Happy. You might also recognize melodies like Ode to Joy or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Even the song Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne has verses that are in the Ionian mode. However, the intro riff, the famous intro riff, is in F sharp Aeolian, and the chorus is also in that Aeolian mode. So here is the interval formula for the Ionian mode, and I'm gonna give you the formula and then I'll give you a quick description of what that all means, okay? So C is the root, then we go up a major second to D, major third to E, perfect fourth F, perfect fifth G, major sixth A, major seventh B, back to C. An interval formula for a scale lists the interval distance each scale degree is above the tonic. I'll show you an interval table on the screen, hopefully right now, with half-step values associated with each interval, meaning how many half steps it is above the tonic. Remember, you can watch my interval theory video for more on this. There's a description below. I want us to focus specifically on the third note in the scale, or this third scale degree in each mode. So just like with chords, the third in a scale can kind of determine whether it leans more major or minor, okay? So the third in each mode gives it a major feel or minor feel, okay? So in the Ionian mode, we have a major third, which contributes significantly to its bright and happy sound. And in fact, the second, sixth, and seventh are all major as well. Gives it a very bright sound. So this third is really important. You're gonna hear in the next mode, our Dorian mode, how the third is minor. And that's what gives it a little bit darker mood, but we'll get to that in a sec. All right, so let's play the Ionian mode. I'm gonna give you 2 patterns, or two shapes to play this scale. And as my subscribers know, I like using E and A string tonic patterns for scales. In our E string tonic pattern, the tonic is the first note we play on the low E string. In our A string tonic pattern, the tonic would be the first note we play on the A string. You can find a link in the description below, which will take you to a video where I describe this concept in more detail. But for now, just know that we're gonna find each tonic of the scales that we're gonna play on either the E string and the A string, and that way we'll have two different patterns or shapes on different locations of our fretboard to play the scale. So here is the E string tonic pattern for C major. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. You can go one extra note if you want. Okay, and then back. All right, now let's demo the A string tonic pattern. So now I'm gonna find the note C on my A string, which is the 3rd fret. I can actually keep going down. All right, so that is the Ionian mode. I will cover each mode in a lot more detail in upcoming videos, but now let's just get through the other 6 modes. I'll try not to be too long-winded, all right? So our Dorian mode, which we've also discussed briefly, is the 2nd mode of the major scale. This mode starts on the 2nd scale degree of the major scale. That's why it's the 2nd mode. And as we mentioned before, it's kind of got a cool, slightly darker vibe than the major scale, right? And here are some songs that use the Dorian mode. A really classic, famous old song, Scarborough Affair, maybe one of the oldest melodies that we still sing today. Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd is Dorian. Some jazz, So What by Miles Davis. Or maybe Mad World, if you guys know your Tears for Fears tunes. If you don't know any of these tunes, just look them up and listen to them, and you'll kind of get the idea, the vibe of the scale, or the mood. All right, so the interval formula for the Dorian mode is root, major 2nd, minor 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6th, minor 7th, back to D, back to the 1. So those minor 3rds and the minor 7 give the scale a little bit of that darker vibe than our major scale, right? So we might say that this is, in a way, a kind of like a minor type scale. Not exactly though. The intervals that were different, actually, the only 2 intervals that were different from the major scale were the 3rd and the 7th, right? So instead of a major 3rd and major 7th, we had a minor 3rd and a minor 7th, giving it that darker sound, right? All the other intervals are the same as the major scale. So a lot of musicians will describe the intervals or list the intervals for different modes by how they compare to the major scale. So this is something I also find incredibly useful, and I bet you will too. So for example, we can say the major scale formula is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's like our baseline, our control scale. And then we're gonna vary that with each mode, okay? So Dorian's formula would be 1, 2, got a minor 3rd, not a major 3rd, so that's flat 3. 4, 5, 6, and then the 7 is minor as well, flat 7. We say flat 3 and flat 7 here because those scale degrees in the Dorian mode are minor intervals, whereas in the Ionian mode, they are major intervals. Remember that a minor interval is a half step lower than a major interval. And to flat something is to literally just make it 1/2 step lower, right? So E flat is a 1/2 step lower than E. So the Dorian mode is a major scale with a flatted 3rd and a flatted 7th. All right, let's play these Dorian modes. Let me show you how to play them. We're gonna stick to the C major family of modes for this entire lesson. So we're gonna do D Dorian. continue up, a couple more extra notes. Okay, let's go back to D and come back down. And now our A string tonic pattern. Here we go. So I'm finding D on the A string. Moving right along here to our Phrygian mode. Phrygian mode is the third mode of the major scale and one of the darkest. You'll hear it a lot in metal music. You'll also hear it a lot in Spanish, like flamenco music, as it adds tension and drama. Yeah, so it's quite dark, but here are some songs that use Phrygian, or kind of have a Phrygian vibe, okay? These all aren't specifically in Phrygian, but use a lot of the characteristics. So I just think they're good examples, okay, to kind of give you the idea of the mood. So, White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane. Wherever I May Roam by Metallica, so some heavy metal. Pyramid Song by Radiohead. Even like a classic hip hop tune, This Is How We Do It, Montel Jordan. That is actually pretty strictly Phrygian. And then the Malagueña, which is a famous flamenco tune, is also in Phrygian. Okay? So here is the Phrygian interval formula, and I want you to notice all of the minor intervals. They make the scale really dark. Minor second, minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth, minor seventh, back to E. Okay, so if I compare that to the major scale formula, we get this. 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, back to 1. So we had a minor second, a minor third, a minor sixth, and then a minor seventh, like all minor intervals, right? Now let's just play it, okay? So I'm gonna use the E Phrygian, and here we go. E string tonic pattern. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Now let's go and find E on the A string, the 7th fret. And you know, I played that last one, the E string tonic pattern, on the 12th fret, which is E, right? You could also play it open. But here is the A string tonic pattern. Down to the E string here. So the Lydian mode is the 4th mode of the major scale. And this mode is known for its airy, bright, and mystical quality. It is often used in film scores, prog rock, and a lot in jazz. Happens to be one of my favorite modes to write music in or solo in. So here are some examples of the Lydian mode. The Simpsons theme, or the flying theme from E.T. Okay, these are good examples of like film scores. The riff from Dancing Days, in fact, the whole tune, I'm pretty sure, is pretty much in a Lydian mode by Led Zeppelin, so Dancing Days by Led Zeppelin. And then Dreams by Fleetwood Mac and Jane Says, Jane's Addiction. Those are pretty strong Lydian characteristics in those tunes. So here is the Lydian interval formula. Let's base it off the note F, okay? So root, major second, major third, augmented fourth. What does that mean? Perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, back to 1. So hear it? It's kind of like a little bit of a weird version of the major scale, right? Or like a little surprising version. So let's compare that to the major scale. 1, 2, 3, sharp 4. That's weird. We haven't had a sharp yet, a sharp interval. 5, 6, 7, and back to 1. So it's quite similar to our Ionian mode, right? The only difference being that augmented fourth or sharped fourth scale degree. which means it's just a half step higher than a perfect fourth. This interval is also known as a tritone and gives the scale a very bright yet uneasy or unsettling feeling. Playing the Lydian mode, we'll start with F Lydian on the E string, okay? So we'll do our E string tonic pattern. I'm gonna come up here to the 13th fret. One extra note. Okay, let's go back to F. F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F. All right, let's do the A string tonic pattern. Okay, so I'm gonna find F on the A string, 8th fret. Here we go. I'm gonna continue, down. All right, the Mixolydian mode. This is the 5th mode of the major scale and is a bluesy, kind of more mellow variation of the major scale. It's widely used in rock and blues and yeah, jazz also. I mean, all these are used in jazz. Here are some tunes that use the Lydian mode. Sweet Home Alabama. Fire on the Mountain, Grateful Dead. Norwegian Wood by the Beatles. Clocks by Coldplay, if you want a little bit more modern example. And here is the Mixolydian interval formula. I'm gonna come back down to my G. 5th note of the C major scale is G. And here's what we got for the interval formula. Root, major 2nd, major 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6th. Is there gonna be a different note than the major scale? Yep. Minor 7, back to 1. So comparing it to our major scale, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. 1. So it's just a major scale with the flatted 7, which gives it a slightly darker vibe than the major scale. It works great over dominant 7 chords, as the Mixolydian mode and dominant 7 chords both have a major 3rd and a minor 7th in them. Food for thought for future lessons. So let's play the Mixolydian mode. Let's play a G Mixolydian. So G on the E string, if you don't know, is the 3rd fret. And here is our E string tonic pattern. One more note. Okay, now let's go find G on our A string and play the A string tonic pattern. So G on the A string, 10th fret. Just easy way to find that is find your 12th fret, which is just the octave of the open string. So A, down a whole step. From A is G. Okay, A flat, G. All right, sorry for that detour. Here's the scale. Continue down. All right, so let's talk the 6th mode of the major scale. This is the Aeolian mode, and it's known for its very dark tonality. This mode can also be called the natural minor scale, and sometimes referred to as the relative minor. When people say a song is in a minor key, they are typically referring to the natural minor scale. Now, in minor tonalities, different rules apply, and variations of the scale, such as the melodic minor and the harmonic minor scale, can also be used. For now, all we need to understand is that the Aeolian mode is synonymous with the natural or relative minor. So if someone is saying, I'm gonna play an A natural minor scale, you can also think of it as Aeolian. All right, so here are some popular songs that use the Aeolian mode or the natural minor scale. All Along the Watchtower, Bob Dylan, or I prefer the Hendrix version. Maybe in the wrong key there. I may be a half step too high, but you got the idea. Ain't No Sunshine by Bill Withers. Zombie by the Cranberries. Another kind of 90s rock example is Losing My Religion by REM. And I could probably spend the rest of my life here just giving you examples of songs that use the Aeolian mode, but I will not do that. Instead, let's go over the interval formula for the scale. We're going to use A, Aeolian, A natural minor, and we have the root, major second, minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth, minor seven, back to 1. Or if we want to compare it to the major scale, we have 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, back to 1. Pretty dark, right? Pretty sad sounding is what most people would say. So note the minor third, sixth, and seventh intervals in the scale. Remember that more minor intervals in a scale make it sound darker. Now let's play the Aeolian mode using our E string tonic pattern. I'm going to find the note A on our E string. I'm going to play you A Aeolian. Here you go. I could continue if I want. Back down. Okay, now our A string tonic pattern. I'm gonna just find A on the A string. I'm gonna do it up here on the 12th fret. Here we go. If I wanted to keep going down, I could. All right, so if you've made it this far in the video, thank you. I know we're getting into the weeds here, but this is super useful information. So the 7th and often neglected mode of the major scale is called Locrian. It is a very dissonant scale marked by its minor and diminished intervals. It is described as extremely dark, unstable, spooky, and dissonant. There are not a lot of songs that exclusively use the Locrian mode, but here are some examples of it in popular music. Think of the main riff from Enter Sandman, right? Army of Me by Bjork. If you guys are like children of the 90s, you know who Bjork is. That's all I'll say. And I'm a big fan, and the song Army of Me is really cool bass line, okay? Listen to the bass line, that is in Locrian. A very modern example would be Tyler, the Creator, the song What's Good. The keyboard intro in that song, like that keyboard riff, is Locrian. So we got root, minor second, minor third, perfect fourth, diminished fifth, minor sixth, minor seventh, and then back. Yeah, so almost all minor or diminished intervals except the fourth. The scale, like I said, is very dark. In fact, the darkest. Diminished is another way to say something is flatted. We use the words diminished and augmented when we alter our perfect intervals, which are unison, fourths, fifths, and octaves. Okay, those are the perfect intervals. So those intervals can be described as either perfect, diminished, or augmented, whereas seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths are described as either major or minor. Now let's do our major scale comparison with Locrian. What do we got? We got 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, back to 1. Okay, so now we're gonna play the Locrian mode, and we're gonna do it off the note B, the 7th note of the C major scale. So here's the E string tonic pattern. I can continue. Back from B. And finally, our A string tonic pattern. I'm going to go to B on the 2nd fret. down. So now that we've taken a 30,000-foot view of the modes and reviewed their intervals and characteristics, even showed you how to play them, what we're going to do in the next video is we're going to dive into specific chord progressions and licks for each mode. We'll even begin to treat each mode as a standalone scale rather than just an offshoot of the major scale. I'm also going to give you more ways to play these scales, like more 3-note and 4-note per string patterns. Now, this knowledge of modes can take time to fully absorb, but once mastered, it can significantly enhance your guitar playing and overall musical understanding. For me, learning modes in high school was a huge leap in my development as a guitar player. Perhaps the largest leap I ever took in my career as a guitarist, musician, okay? It just connected so many dots and tied up so many loose ends that everything just kind of started to make sense when I was playing music or jamming with people. It's really what kind of unlocked the fretboard for me, so I implore you to do some studying on this if you are at the point in your development where it is time to really start to learn all the notes and patterns on the fretboard, right? This is not for beginners, but rather, intermediate to more advanced players that know some basic theory and are feeling a little stuck in their familiar licks and scales, okay? It's a great way to break out of your habit of using pentatonics for everything. Now, whether you're crafting a solo or writing a song, these modes offer you endless possibilities. So be sure to check out some of my upcoming videos where we're gonna go into more depth on modes. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this lesson helpful. And let me know in the comments which mode you're excited to explore, or if you have any questions or just overall comments that you want to share. So until next time, keep playing and stay inspired, and I'll see you back here soon. Peace.